Taking anabolic steroids when you have no medical justification for taking them, you aren't a competitive athlete, and you're under the age of 35 is literally the stupidest thing that a person can possibly do. How are y'all doing? It's Aaron Alaniz, CEO and founder of Basics. And in today's video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about why I personally believe that taking anabolic steroids, if you are under the age of 35, you have no medical justification for taking them, and you are not a competitive athlete trying to put food on your plate, food in your Tupperware containers, or food in your fridge. I personally believe that is the stupidest thing that you can possibly do, okay? But before we dive into that, make sure that you like this video, comment what you want to see next, and subscribe to this channel for new videos every single week. If you're looking for VIP online coaching and you want to get a transformation just like mine and just like some of my other students that you see on the left and right of me, go ahead and book a free 15-minute game plan call with me personally using the second link below. And if you want to go ahead and join my new Feast Mode to Beast Mode online community, go ahead and check out the first link that you see below, and you're going to get access to a free course that I was literally going to sell for thousands of dollars. So not only do you get a community for $14 a month, but you also get a free course that's coming soon called the Alpha Accelerator. So check it out. So first and foremost, today I want to go and start off with a little story, because it seems like on my YouTube channel, the video that got the most traffic was with me talking about anabolic steroids, right? And if you hear me talking, like even when I was mentioning that, I was getting a little bit choked up. And the reason I didn't make a follow-up video for that is because when you go through real pain, guys, and I'm going to open up as much as I can today and just share with you all why I personally believe that if you have no reason for taking them, don't take them, because they will ruin your life. Every time I talk about it, I get like choked up because it's real pain I was going through. It's real memories. It's real bridges I burned. And it brings me back to a period of my life that I wish I could erase, right? So to give you all some context, just in case you didn't watch my old video, when I was about 20 years old, I got my first fitness job ever, right? So before, pretty much from 18 to 20 years old, I was working any job I can pretty much get, right? I was a server at one point. I was a host. I was a busboy. Then I was like, maybe this whole restaurant thing isn't for me. So then I started trying to be a construction worker. And then when I was getting paid $10 an hour to shovel cement and do all these other things, it was like, man, this isn't for me either. So I was always working out and I was doing my construction job. And then I was trying to figure out a way to, fund my music career. So for those of you all that don't know, I used to want to be a rapper, used to want to do that stuff. And the reason I was working all these jobs was because I wanted to save up money and then buy equipment. And then I was just never able to do so just because it wasn't generating enough cash for me at the time. So I had a buddy of mine say, hey, Aaron, have you ever considered being a personal trainer? And fitness has always been something that's come very, very easily to me. And it's come so easily to me that I have, for a long time, kind of neglected that, or at least at the time, I was like, man, I don't know if I really want to be a trainer because it's so easy for me. But that's why I chose to go down that field, because it's like a natural inclination that I have when it comes down to understanding nutrition, when it comes down to understanding biomechanics and things of that nature, right? So when I got a job as a personal trainer, I had a manager at the time, and I'm not going to say where I got the job, whatever the case may be, just because this might be illegal, right? My manager saw me selling, and he was like, Aaron, you're doing good, but can you imagine how good you would be selling these personal training memberships if you were 190 at like a super low body fat percentage? And at the time I was about 170. I had, cut down a little bit of weight, and I also stopped talking to this chick that I was seeing at the time. And I was like, man, I bet I could sell so much more, right? And just keep in mind that when I was selling these personal training memberships, I was doing my best to perform, right? I was really, going up to every single person at the gym, trying to say, hi, my name is Aaron. Do you want a free consultation? Whatever the case may be. And I was doing all right, And when he told me that, I really was in this period of my life to where I didn't understand healthy boundaries. And I got influenced by this person to start taking testosterone. I was taking T-ball, and I was taking like a pro hormone also, right? And when I was taking them, I remember looking in the mirror right before I went over to his house, and they were going to like inject me, right? Because I didn't know how you do any of that stuff, right? And I know the place that someone has to be in order to take that step to the dark side, if that makes sense. Because looking back, it was such like an egoic decision from like a spiritual thing, right? I remember looking in the mirror, for whatever reason, I felt like what God gave me wasn't enough. And that's just like complete bogus, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but just to keep this story going, right? So I ended up taking the steroids, and guess what happened? I got jacked, right? So I started getting jacked. I started lifting more weights. I started, getting more attention. My friends started saying, "Aaron, you're looking crazy," right? And then I lost my job at that gym. A month into taking steroids, mind you, and I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't do the proper research. I was just this young kid that was on social media, seeing this person that looked bigger than I was get all the validation in terms of likes and comments and people sharing his posts. I was like, man, I want that too, right? So when that was going on, I was meaning like I was trying to be in that kind of lane with the fitness stuff and whatever the case may be. I lost my job because the gym that I was working at ended up going through a whole bunch of financial problems right when I got hired. So because I was one of the first people or the last people to get hired, I was one of the first to go, right? Just because that's the way that business typically works. So what ended up happening is when I lost that job, instead of me sitting with that emotion and then trying to figure out a way to go on and learn how to be a better employee, because truth be told, not only was I let go of because I was recently hired, I was also really bad at like showing up on time, right? And I wasn't showing up on time. I wasn't like making sure all the paperwork was done. It was just kind of like, I just wasn't the best employee, right? So what ended up happening is I got fired. And when that happened, I just decided to drive up to Austin, Texas. And then I went around every single gym that I possibly could in order to get a job, right? So instead of me trying to learn the lesson necessary in order for me to do better and then keep the next job, I was just like, no, let me just go find another place because I'm sure, my problems will get solved that way, right? So I went to go to every single gym that I possibly could. And eventually I got hired at Orange Theory Fitness, right? It was a brand new studio, and I'm not gonna say which one it is, but it's pretty evident if you all know me, right? It's not that hard to find, right? It was a brand new one at the time in 2017. And when I got hired, they were like, yeah, you have the look, you speak pretty well. They didn't know my character at the time. It wasn't the best. And they didn't know I was on steroids, obviously, right? But they just said, hey, you can probably help us out in terms of opening up this location. So what ended up happening is I got hired. They gave me the little Orange Theory shirt, and then I started selling memberships. Now, the funny thing is that when I took the first month of the steroids, I started, upping my dose. And before I knew it, I was like the biggest person in Orange Theory. For those of y'all that have ever had like an Orange Theory workout, it's very circuit-based training. So long story short, since I didn't fix my character issues and I was taking steroids and growing up, I actually inherited this darkness, like a spiritual thing from just my family, right? So to give you all some context, my dad, I get a little emotional talking about it. He was an alcoholic, right? He was an alcoholic. Used to see him do some crazy stuff growing up. On my mother's side, her dad was an alcoholic. And then, I think just like I was burdened with all these things that I had to kind of live with, right? And that darkness just like carried me for a long time, guys, And because I couldn't shake that darkness, I lost the job that I had. I had worked so hard. And when I was taking the steroids, for those of you all that aren't aware, when you mess with your hormones, people talk about when you take testosterone or any kind of anabolic steroids, right, that it will pretty much make you more of what you already are. So for me, since I had that underlying darkness, I had that underlying like depressiveness, anxiety, anxiousness, whatever the case may be, and then like proclivity to like enjoy alcohol. When I started taking steroids, it just became more of that person. So I started just being super sad. I was pretty much putting on a mask everywhere I went. And the entire social circle that I developed in Austin was pretty much me wearing a mask as someone that I wasn't, right? Because I wanted to be known as this big, tough guy, but I was also super insecure. Because that's the reason I took them. I didn't take steroids because I felt like I looked great and I wanted to look even better. I didn't take steroids because I was working super hard to be a competitive bodybuilder and I wanted to win the next competition in order to create a legacy for my family. And I wasn't taking steroids because my testosterone was already low and I just wanted to re-optimize my hormones in order for me to function as a regular human being would if I was born with that predisposition, right? I took them because I was an insecure person that was influenced by social media to look a way that I just couldn't naturally, right? And because of that, when I lost the job and then I started working at another job, which again, since they didn't know my character, I went to go apply at a Target in Austin, Texas. I was already couch surfing since I didn't have my finances in order at the time. And I was working at this job that was just so depressing. I was working at Target as a supervisor. I think they call them GSAs. And when I was working that job, it felt like the life got sucked out of me because I went from working in this real cool part of Austin with nice, affluent, just generous people for the most part, to working in Target and everyone was smoking weed and drinking a lot and then not working out as very much. So then when I was around that crowd, I ended up cheating on my diet a ton, right? So when I was in the other crowd, I was at least like pretending like I had it together when I wasn't. But then when I moved in, when I was working at that Target that I'm talking about, I pretty much lost it, guys. I was still taking the stuff because I didn't know how to get off because I took them when I didn't know any better, right? So I was taking these steroids. I didn't know how to get off, so I stayed on for about 4 or 5 months at this point when I got this job at Target. And it was just like I was taking like 500 tests. I was taking this, that, and the third. It was just a mess, right? I remember sometimes I would wake up and then for whatever reason, my nipples would hurt. And thankfully, I don't have any gyno or anything. I'll put some pictures of me right here. I got some good genetics, man, when it comes down to it. But I was lucky enough to escape without gyno, right? And I remember sometimes my nipples would start hurting. I would squeeze this one specifically. And I had milk, guys, like literal milk come out of this nipple, right? And it was just like, man, something's going wrong, right? And when this was going on, I was smoking a lot of weed. I was drinking a lot of things. And since, again, I didn't really tell anybody, like my friends knew, but I was always, presenting myself like I had it kind of figured out just because I was working out and such, right? I also got an offer to, I was trying to manifest living in downtown Austin, right? So I had a buddy of mine that I was, just good friends with. And his girlfriend ended up breaking up with him. And then he needed someone to cover his half of the rent. And I think the rent total was like $1,000 or something. He's like, hey, Aaron, can you pay me $500 a month? And I'll just let you sleep on the couch because I just needed someone to help me out. I was like, dude, hell yeah. And it was in a cool part of Austin. And I just ended up paying him $500. I had a cool couch. And that's where I was living for a little bit, right? And when I was living on that couch and I was around my friend who just couldn't get over his ex-girlfriend, he was super depressed. We were drinking all the time. Weed was still a part of my life, so I was doing that, and I was working a job that I didn't like, and I was still on all these steroids, and I didn't know how to balance my hormones. I couldn't tell my family because I was embarrassed about it. I never got my blood work checked, and I still had the predisposition from my bloodline to be depressed and be anxious and still kind of be in my head about things. I wanted to kill myself, and it was one of the darkest moments of my life, man, because I remember me being by myself in that apartment. I had worked so hard to get there. $500 was a month was a lot to me at the time. And I called my mom, and I was like on my last string. I just remember calling my mom, like, Mom, is there any way that I can just move back home? I tried this. I just can't do it anymore. I just felt empty, And from the outside looking in, man, a lot of people would see me because I was still dating. I was dating some pretty girls and stuff, and I was drinking a lot, and I looked like I worked out a little bit. I wasn't in the best shape, but, I was still doing something, right? And I think at that time, I was either just coming off or I had been off for a little bit. I can't recall very much. If I'm remembering correctly, I think I might have been already coming off the steroids, right? Meaning I was already taking them for months on end, and then I decided to just stop cold turkey. So I didn't have any PCT. That's a post-cycle therapy. So for those of you all that aren't aware of steroids, you typically take something right afterwards in order to get your hormones back to a baseline. But since I was already taking a ton of testosterone, which I was taking like double, triple the natural production, right? Just every single week, right? It's like 500, 600 milligrams, right? I was taking that, taking some pro hormones, and I was just trying to, do that. I was doing that for a long time. And then one day I just decided to stop cold turkey, and my whole world was like collapsing internally because not only was I already like jacked up, you know what I mean? Like my head was already jacked up when I was on them. When I got off cold turkey, it was just a whole nother world of despair, right? So once I called my mother, she was like, Aaron, you can move back home. So I ended up packing up my bags from Austin, Texas, moved back down to the Rio Grande Valley where I was born and raised in. And I had to figure out a way to get back on my feet. When I moved back down, I was already like a shell of myself, and I actually looked worse after I got off of steroids than I did before I even started them, which was so embarrassing because I wish I just never took them because I looked really good at 170, and then I got up to about like 210, guys. I wasn't necessarily the leanest ever, but I remember deadlifting about 545 pounds for reps with a trap bar deadlift. And for me, that's a lot of weight. I'm not a power lifter. I'm not a bodybuilder. I don't want to be like a strength athlete. You'll never see me pick up like an Atlas stone or anything. I just wanted to look good in the mirror, and I just wanted to honestly get validation from my peers, right? And it was from an insecure place, like I was mentioning earlier. So for a couple of years, I was pretty much a shell of the person that I was before I started taking steroids. I think that the depression that I had and the anxiety that I had was actually caused by me taking steroids and not having a PCT. And then since I was in my head and I wasn't necessarily doing anything that led to positive emotions with my lifestyle, I ended up getting depressed and anxiety. And that also led me to taking 5 different prescription medications, guys, for my anxiety, for my depression, and for the fact that I couldn't sleep properly, right? And the medications that I were on and my mental state was so bad, guys, that when I was getting back into university, I was pretty much, this is something I've never said on camera. They labeled me as an SAS student, which pretty much means I was the mentally R word, as some people might say. I don't like saying that word, but that's on camera, that's the closest thing I can mention, right? Like I was special needs for lack of a better term. And the reason they classified me as that is because I couldn't focus in my classes. And then it was obviously like an option that I could have opted in for. And at the time I was like, okay, whatever is going to get me the best grade is what I'll do. So I took that on the chin, and I went to the SAS office, and they just said, hey, you got to sit in the front of the class. And then at the university that I went to, they had all, the chairs and the auditoriums, and they had like this 1 or 2 chairs in the front with like a little laminated piece of paper that said SAS. And then whoever sat there, you knew they had something wrong with them in their head. So talk about having a low self-esteem, right? So not only was I out of shape, not only was I super anxious, not only was I super broke, but then every time that I went to university and I felt like I had this greatness within myself and this knowledge and expertise that I could share regarding fitness and stuff, I kept sitting in the stupid chair, right? And this was all caused by just insecurity, guys. And with social media nowadays, guys, where everyone is judging themselves by the wrong numbers on the screen. And again, to each their own, like I said earlier, if you are a competitive athlete and you want to win your competitions and this is like your purpose in life, then do what you got to do, man. I think some of the best men that I look up to are on some stuff, man. Arnold, the old school bodybuilder, dude's jacked up. He's took steroids. Nothing wrong with it, right? That was his purpose. You look at some of these other actors out here that have made awesome they've embodied movie characters so much that they've inspired a generation to do so. And they had medical supervision to make sure that they were doing things properly. Then sure, you do your thing, right? If you're someone that's over the age of 35 or you're 22 or 23 years old and you've gone to a doctor and then you've always felt like, man, for whatever reason, I just don't have that oomph, right? And your doctor said, hey, it's because you have low testosterone. Then, hey, you go for it, man. You do what you got to do in order to feel healthy and just operate normally, right? But the worst part about this whole thing, guys, was the fact that when I was trying to get back in shape after taking steroids, I had pretty much lost my entire sense of work ethic. Because for those of you all that aren't aware, when you take steroids, you can pretty much get maximal results with like very minimal effort, right? So before I was taking steroids back in the day, I had pretty much a really, really good work ethic. I was counting every macro, counting every calorie, counting every rep, progressive overloading, had journals with all my stats with workouts and stuff, right? And because of that, I got really, really, really good results. And I was working really hard to get that 170-pound body that I had as a 20-year-old, right? And when I started taking stuff, I was able to get 10 times the results, just to it's not like an accurate number, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying, right? I was able to get so much more results with so much little effort. And because of that, I was just like, okay, well, why am I going to work so hard? So I just didn't, right? So because of that, what I ended up deciding to do was when I was getting back in shape, I had to tap back into that mindset of me being super diligent. Because here's the thing, guys, when I got off steroids, it's not like I didn't touch a single thing afterwards. Like I remember trying to take SARMs again, got off. To remember trying to take pro hormones again, and then I got off. And what ended up happening is that one day when I was still overweight and I was trying to take all these other things and I didn't have my diet on point, I didn't have my cardio routine on point, I didn't have a sustainable workout program on point. What ended up happening is my family I went to my family's doctor. They ended up doing a blood test on me, and my liver enzymes were just through the roof, right? And they ended up asking, hey, do you drink alcohol? And I've never been a big drinker. Or I guess I was when I was like on steroids, unfortunately, right? But when I was taking the pro hormones after I got off steroids, I was like, no, I'm not a drinker. It's like, oh, well, your liver enzymes are up here. Like, are you taking anything that you shouldn't? And I just said, no, I'm not taking anything. And then I just got off completely. And then again, I messed up my hormones again. And it was just a bad position I put myself in at the time. So fast forward to about 2020, I was still out of shape. The pandemic was going on, and I needed to find a way to get back in shape because I just turned 23 at that time. And I was like, man, there's people out there that are 23 years old that are already millionaires, that are already fit, that are already living the life that I want. I'm behind, right? And once I was able to accept that I was behind, I was able to get ahead within that same year, right? Because at 23, I knew what it felt like to be super broke, and I also knew what it felt like to be super all right. You know what I mean? And because of that year, I had to figure out a way to get back in shape without taking steroids, without taking any pro hormones, and to do it in a way that was sustainable. Because I did have moments of me getting in shape, but then I fell out of shape because I was trying to do so much at once, right? And I didn't, take a little pre-workout before we filmed. But long story short, when I was trying to find a way to get back in shape, I wanted to redevelop that work ethic that I had before I started taking any steroids, right? I wanted to redevelop my consistency, my diligentness, and I wanted to tap back into that beast mode that I was in when I was a little bit younger, right? And the way that I decided to do that was to get back to the basics, okay? Now, the reason I got back to the basics is because I knew that they worked. Meaning, instead of me taking all these things that might work, instead of me trying to learn, okay, maybe I should intermittent fast, maybe I should do the keto diet, maybe I should do this crazy workout split that is proven as a new scientific way to do something crazy like the Belly Burster 3000, right? Like instead of me doing the Belly Burster 3000 workouts that I would see on the internet, I was just like, okay, what works for sure, right? It was calorie deficit, progressive overload, and sustainable cardio. So because those were the three pillars that I decided to build my entire new routine around, I just stuck with that and I went for depth instead of width. Meaning I was trying to get really, really good at a few things versus trying to be average at a ton of things, right? So because of that, I was able to get back in the greatest shape of my life and sustain it for years up to this point. You know, from 2020 to 2023, I've been in really, really good shape. Am I the leanest right now? No, but I want to also make a little side tangent too. Don't let social media affect your views on how you should look year round, because people that are like fitness influencers for a living are living that way because that's how they, survive, right? So if you're just an average person, don't feel the need to be 8% body fat year round because you don't need to, right? If you are 15% body fat, 10 to 15% body fat year round, you're going to look better than 90% of individuals already. And just don't let the little screen affect the way that you see yourself in the mirror, man. Like if you see people out here that are just jacked and yoked all year round, hey, that's them. You don't have to look like them. You just look the best that you possibly can. And don't feel the need to be anything other than you are, okay? Because if you stick with the basics and you follow a really structured workout program, you have a really good nutrition protocol, and you just follow a very simple cardio routine every single day to make sure that your heart is healthy, you're going to be better than 99% of people out there. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, guys, the real reason I took steroids was because I felt insecure. And because of that, I'm talking to you specifically watching this video. If you were on the fence about taking steroids because you want to look like this person on social media, because you want to look bigger than you used to, because you want to have a revenge body, if it's like a breakup situation, don't do anything to your body that the future you will regret. Because like I said earlier, I personally believe, and it's just my personal belief, if someone is under the age of 35, they are not competitive athletes trying to put food on their table or create a legacy, or they have no medical justification for taking them. Every person that takes steroids just for the sake of vanity was once a person that looked in the mirror and said, what God gave me is not enough. Think about that. And whether you're Christian, that's the way I see things, right? Like, hey, that's what God gave me isn't enough. And do you really think that what he gave you isn't enough? He gave you what he gave you, right? If you believe in the universe, hey, what the universe gave me isn't enough. What your parents gave you aren't enough. Like, don't think that, man. It's such a toxic way to think. Like, you have to just be grateful for what you have. So whether the biggest you can be is 130, hey, and your testosterone's healthy and you don't want to be the next C-bomb or you don't want to be the next social media influencer kind of person, like, hey, just accept your cards, man. I had a buddy of mine that was about 150 pounds soaking wet, and he was on all these things, and he ended up blowing up his back in terms of acne and stuff, and he still has scars to this day. And I'm sure if he could turn back time, he would trade clear skin and healthy hormones at 130 pounds versus 150, jacked up back, and he can't take off his shirt. That's just a terrible life to live, right? There's so much more to life than looking great in a stringer, man. There's so much more to life than just posting a picture of your six-pack on the internet for validation, bro. Like, go contribute value to the world and then get validation off of your service, not necessarily the way you look in a mirror. If you look great too, hey, you can look great also by doing that. But what I'm saying is just don't cause harm to your body. When I had my big transformation, guys, that I was mentioning earlier, I didn't take any supplements, right? I was too broke as a college student to afford any supplements whatsoever, right? And I'll put my picture here on the screen, right? And all I did, guys, was I just followed a basic program, and I just executed it relentlessly. Because a lot of people in fitness, they want to have a very fancy protocol. They want to have a very fancy way of going about things, but they want to execute it very minimally. And what separates myself and a lot of other people that I've been able to help over the past 3 years is that we actually have a very minimal game plan, but we execute it with maximum effort. So again, it's better to have a minimum game plan and then execute it with maximum effort versus having a maximum game plan, but execute it with minimum effort. Okay? So just keep in mind, guys, health is wealth. Vanity is going to ruin your life if you let it. Comparison kills. Be grateful for what you have, and you don't need to take any pills to be that fucking man. Easy peasy, right? So thank y'all for watching. Love you all very much. Go ahead and subscribe to this channel for new videos every single day for the foreseeable future. And if you want to go ahead and join the Feast Mode to Beast Mode community for only $14 a month, go ahead and check out the first link that you see in the video description, or you can check out the pinned comment. You'll see it right there. We have a free course in there that I was literally going to sell for thousands of dollars, guys, and I'm going to give it to you all if you join the community. You can learn how to go ahead and make a very basic workout program. We have a couple of workout program templates in there. We have a nutrition breakdown that where you can make your own meal plan and get the best results that you possibly can without having to take steroids, guys. I promise you can look so much better than a lot of people that are on steroids that aren't going about things the right way. If you just follow the basics, you work really hard, you stay consistent, and you're around a whole bunch of other people like myself that are also doing things the quote-unquote right way for people that aren't. Again, competitive athletes, they have no medical justification for taking them, and they are under the age of 35. And if you want to go ahead and book a free 15-minute game plan call with myself personally, go ahead and book a free call with me using the second link that you see in the video description of this video, and we can go ahead and talk a little bit more about the goals that you want to achieve, your ideal physique that you want to achieve, and we can figure out if you qualify for one-on-one coaching with myself and the Basics team as a whole. I'll put some screenshots right here beside me, that way you can see some of our before and afters. I'll go ahead and also put a student success story on one of these corners right over here, and you can check that out because we do really good work with guys across 28 states across the country: Canada, Sweden, Australia, Finland, and the Netherlands. And if you want to go ahead and get online coaching for myself personally so we can help you look great without steroids, then go ahead and do that and we'll help you out ASAP. So thank you all for watching, and again, if no one's told you in a minute, I'll tell you right now, it's time to get your shit together, man. See ya.